Welcome to So Many Receipts. I'm Flo Michelle, former entertainment editor and lifelong reality TV addict, unpacking the tea from Farmer Wants a Wife, Real Housewives, Bravo and beyond. Let's get stuck in. Hello, Fleur here, and welcome to the last official Farmer Wants a Wife-led episode of So Many Receipts. But don't worry, I'm not disappearing into the sunset on the back of a tractor. I'm just taking a break next week, but we will be back on Friday, August 7 with a brand new Aussie-led reality TV podcast series. We will be talking about the Farmer Wants a Wife reunion, what we actually thought of the season, what we'd change about it, but we'll also have a new ringleader kicking off each show with Celebrity Traitors Australia. So excited for that. And when I say we, I literally mean we. My trusty podcast sidekick, Shelley Seddon, will be back after her break. We'll pretty much be sticking with this formula and the running time. There'll be chats on the traders, US realities like Real Housewives, of course, the occasional juicy doco, and I'll also keep doing my storytime segments from my years as a journo. People say they've enjoyed my little bizarre trips down memory lane. Honestly, half the time I think, did that actually really happen? And yes, it did. I'll also try twisting Shelley's arm into sharing a few of her own stories. But for today, I'll be revealing my farmer report card. There's MAFS breakup mayhem, the Valley, and more. So let's get stuck in. So I thought Farmer Wants a Wife completely jumped the shark this season, particularly with the Dylan, Ali, Scarlet love triangle. For weeks, they teased us that Dylan was actually going to pick Scarlet. We had the I'm head over boots for ya line a few times. We had lingering looks. We had romantic music. We had a dozen different shades of lipstick from Scarlet. But honestly, I don't think Dylan ever recovered from getting lost in Ali's eyes. But I'm still not convinced he made the right choice. The more I watched Dylan, the more I thought, is this guy really looking for a farmer's wife, or is he just looking for a rodeo wag? Because he's clearly more rodeo rider than farmer. He also owns a clothing brand, and I actually think he only works part-time as a farmhand for some extra cash, or maybe not even that. Scarlet, meanwhile, was horsey. She was the polo princess. I think she would have been fine as a rodeo wag. Ali, maybe not so much. Now, as for the actual jump the shark moment, I was screaming when Ali marched back into that black tie dinner after her dramatic walkout. Everyone's jaw hit the floor. It was giving Brooke from MAFS walking back into the dinner party with "I'm back, bitches." And then that kiss, I'm sorry, but that kiss was so staged. Every contestant in a 50-meter radius could see it. At that point, I thought Farmer Wants a Wife had officially transformed into MAFS with horses, just with fewer veneers. Now, the $19.99 question is, did Ali and Dylan actually last? Because the reunion promo gave us this one quick little shot of them sitting about 3 suburbs apart on the couch looking really stony-faced. Now, that could absolutely be strategic editing, but it has raised eyebrows, especially because Ali said, I'll give you about 5 years to get this rodeo stuff out of your system, and then we're settling down and having kids, okay? And Dylan's response was basically, I haven't really thought much about that before reluctantly sort of agreeing to this plan. So I really liked Scarlet. She was ballsy, different, and she handled being dumped with good grace, I thought. Interestingly, Dylan has since revealed that they actually had quite a few conversations about whether their lifestyles would work together, but of course it all got edited out. Scarlett also said she told Dylan in an unaired conversation that she probably wouldn't move to the farm for 6 months or maybe a year. She wanted the relationship to develop naturally first from afar. Ali, on the other hand, was apparently ready to pack her bags immediately. She was like, where's my train ticket? And according to Scarlett, Dylan really wanted someone who'd move in with him straight away, and he didn't like Scarlett's answer. See, that actually is an important conversation because it makes more sense of his decision. Instead, they made it look like he was genuinely torn between 2 women until the very end. But hey, maybe he was, or maybe the producers just desperately needed to keep us all watching. Either way, in 5 years' time, is Ali going to be reminding Dylan of that little agreement she made? And will he suddenly remember that he's got a rodeo on that weekend? Or has this farm romance already withered on the vine? So Yvonne from Farmer has been copping criticism for walking away from Jared before he had the chance to dump her. But I actually didn't mind it. I wasn't mad at it. If she genuinely thought she was about to be sent home, why not beat him to the punch? I wish I'd done that with a couple of people that had dumped me. I mean, it was reminiscent of David walking away from Alyssa at final MAFS vows. I mean, they really did lean heavily into the MAFS playbook this season. However, a lot of viewers really did not like Yvonne's walkout. They felt Jared deserved to have his say because the point of the show is that it is the farmer's choice. I also think part of the backlash was probably because people liked Brody more, and they most likely wanted the satisfaction of seeing Yvonne get officially dumped. Now, Jared has also copped criticism for his apparently bland screen presence. I actually saw someone in a forum saying he had the personality of an arrowroot biscuit, plain as plain can be. And then another person said, no way, he's more of an Arnott's Marie. That's a much plainer biscuit. And then this biscuit chat actually became a story in who.com.au. LOL. Although Yvonne has since defended him, saying that when the cameras weren't rolling, he was actually kind of funny, but the second filming started, he'd freeze. Yvonne also says the moment she felt she had to dump this guy was during homestays. She showed him her bedroom and he didn't say anything, actually, not a word. He didn't comment on any of the books she had or any of the artwork on the walls, no observations, nada. He was obviously checked out, or maybe that was just him normally. Jared also said he never initially put his hand up for the show. 3 years ago, a woman he worked with put his name forward, and last year he suddenly got the call to come on down. Maybe because he's good looking and they just wanted to stack the season with cute guys. He did say in the first episode, I can't believe I'm actually doing this. And it was evident that he was no natural on TV. To his credit, we did see a bit more emotion from him with Brody at the end. It's like he finally relaxed. Whether they're still together, though, I'm not sure. They do live a long way apart. I have to say, I'm pretty intrigued for this reunion. If more than one couple are still together, I will be very surprised. So when Farmer started, I made a bold prediction here on the podcast and on our socials. I said that the farmer never ends up with the number 5 woman. So, when they're all standing in the barn handing out their 5 invitations to the farm, I said the woman picked last is almost always the wild card. She's usually got some kind of obstacle. She lives too far away. She hates farming. She's allergic to cows, etc. But she's there to basically keep the storyline interesting. Now, this was a risky prediction for me to make because historically my intuition has sucked. You are looking at someone who has never picked the Melbourne Cup winner or actually any horse in the top 3. My other theory was that the farmers often end up with one of the 2 women they pick first or second. And this year that was true for 2 of them. Dylan chose Ali and Alex chose Eddie, although Eddie, wah. I also said the number 3 and 4 women often disappear into the background. And that also was kind of true with Brody, who barely got any airtime with Jared. Only at the end did she start getting airtime. The one farmer who completely blew my theories apart was Zach. He picked Maya as his number 3 in the barn, and she featured heavily all season, becoming his final choice. I actually did not see that coming at all at the start. Now, Jason choosing Poppy did complicate my theory because she was his number 5 pick. However, I think that was by default. I think if Beth the vet hadn't left to be with her daughter, I think she might have been Jason's final choice, although I do see she's got a new boyfriend now as well. Of course, Poppy and Jason had a huge obstacle. She didn't want kids and he did. And considering they split just weeks later, I'm going to stubbornly stand by my number 5 theory. So I'm giving myself 85% for this report card, sort of like an A minus, which for someone whose prediction record is utterly woeful, that is pretty good. Finally, a little shout out before we stick a pin in Farmer this week. The nice people over at Pedestrian News Site actually turned one of my TikToks into a story this week. They referenced and put up my video where Benny addressed the rumours that she was flirting with Farmer Jason. So if you've come over from that article, hello. And if not, thanks for listening anyway. Well, it's been a huge week in MAFS land, and I'm genuinely gutted with the shock news that Stella and Filip have split. Honestly, I thought these 2 were going to beat the MAFS curse, but the clues in the last week were definitely there. About a week ago, I noticed fans asking Filip on his Instagram comments whether he and Stella were still together. Then people pointed out they hadn't posted each other for ages, had unfollowed one another, and deleted all their photos together. Ouch. According to the Daily Mail, they actually split weeks ago, just before their 1 year anniversary. The report claims Filip ended it because they weren't on the same page about the future, with Stella allegedly telling a source Filip didn't have enough money to kind of keep up their lifestyle together. Following the story, Stella posted two very emotional messages on her Instagram. So these posts were incredibly long. They're probably over 1,000 words combined. They were almost written like poems, and I think that may have been part of the healing process for her to write in such a cathartic way. So she didn't mention Filip by name, but basically admitted she'd made mistakes and realized what she thought was ambition was sometimes actually fear of falling behind in life. She also reflected that what she'd intended as love and drive may have come across as pressure and control. Meanwhile, Filip posted initially something more general about finding balance between relationships, family, and purpose. And it was actually a bit strange because when the DM broke that story at 7 a.m., at first they said Stella dumped Filip. And because they're the main MAFS media partner, I always go by their information. But when I looked at the article a few hours later, they changed it to Filip called it off. Whoops. Thank God I checked before I posted my own TikTok about it. The next day, I presume to clear up the confusion, Stella did another much shorter and direct post confirming that yes, Filip had dumped her by phone, that she'd actually made the decision to move to Melbourne, where he is, despite having a business here in Sydney, and that she was basically blindsided and now feels very embarrassed that she was so invested. Now, Filip, who had been seen of the hero of the show for an entire year, is getting an absolute pounding online for dumping Stella by phone. I think they must have been living in two different cities, which I didn't realize. However, I do think if that was the case, he should have spent a few $100 to fly up here to at least dump Stella in person. I also thought the second statement he put out was kind of cold. Can people please respect our privacy? And I wish Stella well. Yikes. People are also now wondering if Stella's friends at the MAFS wedding were right all along for theorising that Filip was just on the show for his YouTube fitness channel. Look, I don't think he was. I think this pair really did love each other, so I was sad. Although I had some weird people commenting on my video saying, "Oh, why are you so sad? Are they your family?" No, they're not. But surely I can still have empathy for two people I don't know. Sheesh. Anyway, on to another sad MAFS couple, and this story has taken a very unexpected turn. Police are continuing to investigate an alleged assault situation involving Jeff and former partner Rhi. According to Chatter, police attended their apartment on June the 1st after a woman sustained minor injuries. A 41-year-old man was interviewed and released pending summons. Jeff has not been charged, and both he and Rhi have asked for privacy. Look, we don't know who called the cops. We don't know how the alleged injuries came about. I also noticed that apart from Chatter, no other media outlet picked up this story, which is quite telling. I think people are just staying out of it until we know more. And although I'm shocked at this twist, considering they dated before the show and it didn't work out the first time, I wasn't entirely sure it was going to work out the second time, if I'm honest. Finally, ending on some happier news, Gia from MAFS has announced she's 3 months pregnant with boyfriend Alan Wallace from Love Triangle. Congratulations, guys. Though I do feel a little sorry for Gia because the announcement has been completely overshadowed by the Stella Filip news. And in perhaps the most unexpected crossover of 2026, Gia has also teamed up with none other than Farmer Wants a Wife star Miranda for a brand new podcast with a teaser on social saying 2 villains, 1 microphone. Now, that was not on my reality TV bingo card, but I am very interested to tune in. So the Valley is still doing well in Hayu's weekly rankings. People either seem to love the Valley or else they hate watching it. I'm actually hope watching it. I gave this show a spray last week because every week I tune in hoping, praying actually, that we're finally going to get some fresh drama and move on. We do not. Instead, we get another conversation about Danny's leg touching incident from 3 years ago. So out of sheer desperation, I watched the latest episode of the Valley Aftershow thinking, surely there has to be something more to these people. I mean, I was scraping the bottom of the Bravo barrel at that point, but to my surprise, there actually was. So I've always wondered why Janet and Kristin went from being close friends to now hating each other's guts. I'd always assumed it was because Kristin sided with her friends Nia and Danny about the leg touching. Turns out that's only part of the story. There's actually a whole backstory that somehow never made it onto the main show. But firstly, can we just talk about how strange Janet was on the after show? She's sitting beside Michelle, who's supposed to be part of the conversation. They're supposed to be looking at each other. But every time Janet answers a question, she completely sort of turns sideways and talks to the producer off camera instead of Michelle. I was thinking, Michelle, blink twice if you'd like Janet to acknowledge your existence. Anyway, the producer asks Janet what really happened between her and Kristin, and Janet explains that years before Kristin met Luke, she was having relationship problems with another guy. Whenever things went wrong, she'd call Janet. Janet said she invested hours and hours trying to help Kristin work through everything. Then, almost out of nowhere, like after a whole weekend of emotional downloading, Kristin would suddenly post a photo on Instagram on a Monday saying, Monday crush, love this guy. Janet's reaction was basically, hang on, are we talking about the same person? So she says she felt she'd been pouring so much emotional energy into helping Kristin, yet Kristin wasn't actually keeping her in the loop about what was really happening. Janet said it started making her question the friendship because she never felt like she was getting the full story. Then came what sounds like one of the worst house sitting jobs in Bravo history. Janet let Kristin and her dog stay at her house while she and Jason were on their honeymoon. When they got home, Janet claims there was dog doo-doo in the house, plus vomit on the floor. She never actually clarified whether the vomit was animal or human, which somehow makes the story even more horrifying to consider. And to top it all off, Kristin had apparently helped herself to Janet's expensive bottles of wine. Janet said she felt really offended that Kristin disrespected her house, and that was when she started putting boundaries in place. Kristin didn't respond to that well, and from there on, the friendship deteriorated, and then the Danny situation was the final nail in the coffin. Now, here's my question. Why wasn't any of this on the actual show? This is so much more interesting than hearing the cast talk about a leg and seeing Danny get a vasectomy. So people always say reality TV has become overproduced, but I actually think the Valley is underproduced. It feels like the producers organize these parties and then think, we'll just turn up with our cameras and record whatever they say. Here's hoping it's interesting. The problem is, it's not. So Janet's only recently explained why she's still so affected by the Danny incident, saying it's triggering because she experienced an alleged assault when she was younger. But why wasn't that part of her story last season, if that's the case? The same goes for her breakdown with Kristin. If viewers had understood that, then their dynamic would have made a lot more sense. Let's hear more about this falling out. I also wanted to hear Kristin defend herself over the vomit, which is actually something I never thought I'd say out loud. So I'm wondering, is Janet deliberately holding on to information for future storylines, or do the producers already know all this and choose not to include it? Because if that's the case, then they're doing the audience dirty. The Valley needs this kind of stuff now, not next season, and not buried in the after show. Finishing with story time, and because we're almost mercifully at the end of Farmer Wants a Wife, I'm looking back at one of the strangest things I ever had to do in the name of a reality TV dating show. So back in 2002, Channel 7 aired Aussie reality series Temptation Island, which was filmed in Fiji and was basically the grandfather of Love Island and some of the relationship tasks we now see on MAFS. The idea was simple. Take actual real couples, separate them into different villas, surround them with attractive singles, and send them on dates. And then show them the cruel footage of what their partner had been up to afterwards. One of the biggest storylines was this couple, Clinton and Piaf, where Clinton was very much tempted by a woman named Georgina. So this was when I was at NW magazine, and for publicity, I organised an interview with Clinton saying that we wanted to photograph him shirtless in bed. The publicist agreed, but said that we had to provide the bed. And the only person I knew who'd agree to giving up their bed for such a ridiculous purpose was me. The only thing was, I didn't want a reality TV contestant rolling around in my actual sheets. So I bought a new chocolate brown sheet set from David Jones for about $100. We did the photo shoot at my unit, and afterwards, I told everyone at the office that Clinton had arrived wearing foundation and that the sheets were now covered in his makeup. One of the editors immediately said, "Oh, I have an idea. Why don't we run a competition to give away Clinton's soiled sheets?" And I remember thinking, huh? Out of all of the crazy ideas this crazy magazine has ever come up with, this might be the craziest. Who on earth would want this D-listers foundation covered sheets? But somehow people did. Readers had to explain in 25 words or less why they wanted these soiled sheets, and the marketing team picked a winner. I mean, someone actually sat down and put pen to paper for this. And then I had to package up those sheets and send them off, although I did try and fold them nicely. So, funnily enough, the publicist later admitted Clinton's famous secret diary that we published during the show's run wasn't entirely his own words. So, during this photo shoot, the PR and Clinton stepped outside onto my tiny balcony and shut the door for a mysterious private conversation. When they came back in, the PR told me that Clinton had kept a journal and had written notes about the filming, and why don't you publish the entries each week in the mag? And I thought, yeah, that's a great idea. So apparently Clinton had written some thoughts down, but years later this PR admitted to me that they had cleaned them up a little, possibly added some creative flair, and that the private conversation on the balcony was to workshop this shady little idea. One of the famous diary quotes about Georgina was, "Her eyes were green, green, like the colour of Midori." Yes, the alcohol. What a classy comparison. It was so iconically bad that we actually put it on the cover, like a cover line on the magazine. And years later, I found out that line was completely made up, which was actually fine by me. I just laughed. Honestly, these early reality TV days were such a different era. The shows were a lot more fluffy. There wasn't talk of duty of care, mental health checks, background checks, and all of the serious conversations about bullying and misogyny that now come up on shows like MAFS. I mean, I do think it's good that they now do those checks, but back then, reality TV was mostly ridiculous, harmless, messy fun. In this case, literally messy. And while I understand that times have changed, I do miss that slightly chaotic era where giving away a stranger's dirty sheets was actually good, clean fun. Okay, so that's it for this current podcast series. I do hope you've enjoyed listening, and thanks for your company. As mentioned, tune in 2 weeks' time for our new pod series. Until then, happy reality TV viewing.